everyone, my name is Emily, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about a coping mechanism that I have been using lately anytime I feel anxious or overwhelmed or stressed. And I want to be clear that this is in no way a revolutionary idea. This is what art has been used for since the beginning of time, and this is not an original thought. So I don't want people to think that this is something that I have somehow laid claim to, or that I think I'm some kind of trend starter, because that's not it. This is something that brings me peace, and I'd really like to share it with you guys, and hopefully it will bring you peace too. I've talked a little bit about my past mental health dealings and how I dealt with my mental health in the past, how I dealt with my mental health in the wrong way in the past, but I haven't talked a lot about my mental health in the present and how it is now. I feel like in the last few years, I've really established some great coping mechanisms to calm the storm that sometimes brews about in my head when I get upset. I feel like I have some really great devices and exercises that are personally tailored to me that I use to kind of keep me grounded. And one of the most powerful exercises that I do is painting flowers without a sketch. And it sounds so simple, and it's like, floral artists do this literally all the time. What makes this so special? And I think by it not being terribly unique or special, or at least in this case, complicated, that is what makes it so calming. Because I'm not talking about hyper-realistic floral paintings here, because those can get incredibly complicated, especially when it comes to mixing colors. That's not what we're talking about, though. And I'm also not trying to say that people who paint this kind of art for a living, like their art lacks complexity. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. I'm talking purely about letting your mind be in the freest state possible. You know, kind of let your imagination take the reins without having too many tight constraints or plans to what you're making. Essentially, just let your mind paint the garden. I don't even use reference most of the time when I'm doing this. I don't even worry about if these flowers are even real, or if they're alien flowers, or if hydrangeas come in yellow. I don't worry about any of that. In fact, I don't worry about anything. I am focused on the shapes. I am focused on the colors. I am focused on playing with transparency and height and whatever looks good in my little garden box. I'm focused on painting what looks good to me and what feels good to paint. And I know it doesn't necessarily have to be florals. It can be simple items around the house, or, plants and botany in general. It can be really anything. But for me specifically, if I branch, but I'm too far out of this, I start to focus on making like a whole piece, making a whole cohesive piece, and my brain starts to get mushed inside and I start to get stressed. So for me personally, I kind of keep it confined to botany and very simple, small things around the house, cute little ceramic pots. I try to keep it simple so that the shapes and the colors and the textures all stay simple as well. Because for me, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of other artists who are watching this, like if things get too big, I stress out. I cannot control that at all. I cannot control my brain going, this needs to be more complicated. This needs to have purpose. This needs to look better compositionally so other people will like it. Like if I get too big, my brain stresses out. I cannot control that. But what I can control is what I am painting in that moment. So I try to keep it small. And that's not to say those everyday stresses about creating a good painting are not important to your artistic journey, because they very much are. That's the whole point of being an artist, is to be a little bit concerned about how other people are viewing your art, because art is meant to be shared. But that's really not what we're talking about today. We're just talking about creating art for the sake of creating art, and creating art that makes us feel good and that calms us in a time of high anxiety. So before I go over how to paint some very basic floral shapes, I want to talk a little bit about the products that I'm using, because if I'm going to be creating some art that I really love, I want to be using products that I feel comfortable with, products that I know are reliable and that are not going to create any further stress as I try to de-stress. I've been been using the 100% cotton watercolor paper by B Paper for years, and it has consistently been my all-time favorite watercolor paper. This video is a collaboration with B Paper, but even if they weren't collaborating with me, I would still probably be using their paper. Back when I did commissions, 100% of my watercolor commissions were done on B Paper. For me personally, they consistently beat out Arches, Fabriano, Strathmore. I have just always preferred to use my B Paper. Here I'm painting in their watercolor journal, which just checks all the marks for me. It's filled with their 100% watercolor paper. It's spiral bound, so I can open it nice and flat. There's no cracking of a spine involved. I can just open it and start to work. It's square, which is something that I am very much attracted to in sketchbooks. I've had a few square sketchbooks and they have never failed to be attractive to me. I don't know why, don't ask me. It's got plenty of pages, but it doesn't feel impossible to fill up. I just really, really love this sketchbook. They also sent me a ream of their watercolor paper in a large format, which was exciting because what I did is I cut strips and then I just painted flowers all the way down those strips. So it'll be interesting to try to find a frame for these paintings. And finally, they sent me some heavyweight black Bristol paper, which I used to create little tiny scenes in gouache. And even though it doesn't say it's meant for wet media, it held up really, really well to the gouache. It was thick enough that it was able to take it without warping too terribly. I've had a really, really, really hard time finding good black Bristol paper for gouache. Pretty much any black Bristol I have used before or black cardstock has just shriveled the second I put the wet media to it. So I was really pleased with that, but I knew I would be. Again, it's a collaboration, but even if it wasn't, I have relied on B Paper's marker paper, sketchbook paper, watercolor paper for years and have consistently gotten amazing results. They have never let me down. The only potential con, I guess, depends on what kind of painter you are. Like if you like to use tons and tons of water, if you are a really wet watercolor artist, then this paper might not be for you because it is a little bit on the thin side. But that is personally why I like it. It doesn't make the journal feel so bulky. But yeah, that con is all up to personal preference. But anyway, I totally, highly recommend all the paper from this brand. I very much enjoy it, and I'm really, really thankful that I could do this collaboration with them. So thank you so much to B Paper. Now, the watercolors I'm using are actually very special and have a bit of a special meaning behind them. So I'm going to actually hold off and talk about that at the end of the video, but I really recommend that you sit through or at least skip to the end of the video to hear about why these watercolors are so special to me and just special in general. Also, if you guys are wondering why I've been talking like this, for one, I feel like I might be getting a cold and my nose is really stuffed up. And for two, this is a video about anxiety. So I don't really feel like being way up here and wacky and silly. I feel like kind of more comfortable being down here and being able to just talk to you guys on like a one-on-one level. You know what I mean? I put a lot of thought and care and time into this video, and I don't want to ruin it with feeling like I'm putting on a performance, which is not a pressure you guys put on me at all, but I didn't want to do that today. You know, this is how I talk to my son when I'm trying to get him to be calm. This is how my husband and I talk to each other when it's the end of the day and we're bringing the lights down, we're bringing the mood in the house down. So that's why I'm talking like this, if you're wondering. I feel like my nose has progressively gotten more and more stuffed as this video wears on. I feel like I get the most stuffed up at night. But anyway, that's beside the point. Here's how I paint some really basic floral shapes. For hydrangeas, I kind of envision the little bloom of the tiny hydrangea flowers as one entity. And then I pick my lightest color to start with, and I draw these little tiny flowers of maybe 3 or 4 leaves. I start with my lightest color, I then build to my mid-range color, and then I go to my darkest color. And as you can see, like, they're legitimate like circles. And then, you know, if they're too perfect, if the circles are a little bit too perfect and I want to kind of rough them up a little bit, I just throw in a couple little flowers here and there and maybe single petals if the whole flower won't fit. And then from there, I take whatever color I feel appropriate for the stem and the leaves, and I just kind of add them on. For a lot of these, it's really just more watching me do it than it is having me explain it, but I will still do both. For roses, I literally wrap the petals around the center of the rose. Like I kind of stagger the petals, and the center of the rose, I kind of imagine like 3 petals and then like they're kind of pinched and twisted in the center. So imagine when a rose just starts to bloom just barely and it's kind of that puckered shape. I put that puckered shape in the middle and then I just kind of swirl the petals around. Roses are so much fun to paint. Sometimes I like to start in the middle with one color and then I kind of ombre out, or I start in the middle with a very dark shade of a certain color and then I kind of fade out, make it a little bit more transparent. I really like to play with like how close the roses are to each other and keep those like external petals really transparent so you can kind of see the roses overlapping. I just think that looks really, really attractive. And I do that with other flowers as well. It's just one of the most relaxing things for me with painting florals is like the transparency and getting to overlap. It's just, there's something that's just so right about all of it. I don't know if you guys ever did this when you were kids, but like during color week in like kindergarten or preschool, you'd get those like cellophane sheets and like overlap them. Something about that always just like was right. Everything was right in the world when I got to play with those cellophane sheets. And then when I was in high school doing theater and doing technical work, getting to play with like the gels of the big overhead lights, like that was something that was really satisfying to me. So I wonder if that was like a sign. It was foreshadowing that one day I was going to be a watercolor artist. And speaking of transparency, I think poppies are like, for me, like the #1 flower that I make translucent and kind of, I like to call them fairy petals because it reminds me of like fairy wings, just like that really like thin, delicate texture. It's just very attractive to me. For poppies, really it's just making like these blob triangles. Sometimes I'll get kind of fancy with it and I'll like create a little negative space divot at the finest point of the triangle. And then you kind of just unite them in a roundish shape. And similar to the roses, the outermost petals I kind of stagger a little bit. Just really, really attractive. And poppies gather a little bit. The stem gathers at the base, and then you just kind of add a stem. I'm not being very technical when it comes to stems. Don't ask me about stems because I couldn't tell you. Lavender is a really, really simple shape. Essentially, I kind of imagine like a triangle or like a really long diamond with a short butt, if that makes sense. And then I just put a bunch of dots within those constraints. And it's more like the grouping of the lavender that tends to get a little bit more complicated, but you can kind of just play with it and whatever feels right. Definitely play with height too. You don't want to do like all lavender one height because that's not how it grows, and that's not typically how it's styled in a bouquet. So that's another great thing to just, in general, play with height. Sometimes to add interest to my bouquet or my wreath or whatever I'm making, I'll add vines and leaves that don't necessarily go with that certain flower, but just look right in the wreath or the garden or what have you. That's the thing for me. Like, these are alien flowers to me. I don't care if they are based in reality. I just want them to look pretty. That's the thing that makes this so stress-free for me, is that I am not worried if any of these flowers are based in reality, if they come in those colors, if those leaves match the buds. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to paint something that feels good to paint. Like I said before, I don't want to have to worry about anything. I just want my imagination to wander. Another really good way to add interest to your bouquet or your wreath is to add little aerial specks of dust or dots or little loop-de-loops or fleur-de-lis, just kind of really anything that kind of flows with what you're making. I am, for one, a proponent of adding dots to your artwork. I feel like it is an incredibly easy way to add atmosphere to your artwork. Dots and then little puffy pieces of cotton. I just mix a super, super light brown and I punch a little light brown dots all over. I let that dry. I come in with a slightly darker brown and I just add little lines around those dried dots, and boom, you've got little dust particles or cotton or whatever dandelion spores if you add a little seed to the end of it. But there are a few examples of different flower types, how to paint them, and a lot of other flowers are based on some of these very basic principles, like of clusters and of staggering petals. So I think a good rule of thumb is when you start doing this, feel free to look at references of different flowers, pick some of your favorite flowers, or do what I did, go to a local nursery, take some photographs, and just kind of go from there. Once you feel comfortable painting the floral bodies, just kind of let your creative side take over and start creating some alien plants that don't actually exist, and just have fun with it. It's a really great way to turn your brain off and to refocus your energy. And for me personally, it just really helps kind of set everything back on track. And I just wanted to share specifically what my steps were in painting what I like to call these anxiety flowers. So real quick, I want to go back to those watercolors that I was talking about. I used them a few videos ago, and everybody was asking me, oh my God, that palette's so cool. Where did you get it? I love those colors. And trust me, I love these colors in the palette too. Very, very unique. But my friend Regina actually makes these watercolors from scratch. She messaged me on Etsy a few months ago, kind of explaining her story, all about her store and her life, and how she had recently experienced a bit of a tragedy, and she was kind of planting her roots again and starting to rebuild her life, and creating these watercolors is something that brings her a lot of peace and happiness. And I was like, yes, please, I'd love to try them. So she sent them over, and I was just so impressed with what I received. She sent me the kind of like the gift package on her website, which comes with a little watercolor block that she made, as well as this palette, which is nothing like I have ever used before or even held before. It feels heavy, it feels luxurious and expensive. When I opened it, the mixing tray is just flat, smooth glass, I believe, or it may be acrylic glass. I'm not 100% sure, but it's just flat and smooth, and that was more than perfect for me. So easy to clean, so easy to mix on it. I really, really hate the watercolor tins that you get in a lot of the bigger brands when they sell you their watercolors. I'm just kind of tired of the floppy tins, and I don't really like mixing on the surface if I don't have to. And this mixing tray was just everything, and the color selection was everything as well. I promise you, I'm not here trying to like shill these products to you. This is a video about something that I really care about, and I want to make sure I include products that really make me feel good and are just highly reliable, and that they're products that I would 100% recommend to you guys, because I do review videos and some reviews are relatively positive, but if I am not explicitly saying at the end of the video that I recommend the product, I'm not recommending the product. I can have a positive opinion about a certain product and still not really recommend it. But in this case, in this video, I am recommending these products if you're looking for watercolor paper or a watercolor palette to add to your collection. So I definitely recommend the Watercolor Journal from B Paper and the Bristol, and pretty much any paper from B Paper. They are a wonderful company, very environmentally conscious. They're just a really, really great company, and I'm really glad that I could collaborate with them on this video. And of course, I recommend that watercolor palette. It more than impressed me, and you will definitely be seeing it in more and more videos. Anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this heart-to-heart video. I feel like it's one of the most stress-free videos I've ever made, mostly because I just told myself, like, don't get stressed and anxious while making an anti-anxiety or how to cope with anxiety video. That makes no sense. But I had a lot of fun getting the footage of the flowers and painting the flowers and getting to relax on my deck. And it was overall just a very, very good experience, very cathartic getting to use the products that I really love, as well as recommending them to you. I will put links to the aforementioned products in the description down below so that you guys can go check it out. I did make this video a little bit longer because I know you guys were asking for that. I didn't want to make it too terribly long, so let me know if this is roughly a good time every now and again to throw out a longer video that is not the podcast. Also, let me know if you like this kind of style of video where I'm a little bit more quiet. It's the end of the night. I'm just kind of talking low and relaxed and comfortable. Like I said, how I talk to my son when I want him to calm down, how I talk to my husband when we're trying to kind of relax and be quiet at night. It's not quite ASMR. I couldn't do that again, but just let me know. And again, thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to stay out of trouble. See you guys later. This video was brought to you by viewers like you. If you'd like to support the channel, please go to www.patreon.com/EmilyArtful. Thanks again for watching.